Greetings and welcome to the GM Academy Workshop special event. This is the one. This is the big one. This is the one we have been building up to the entire time. We are going to build a campaign from scratch. That's right, beginning to end, following the 8 steps of plot, following the concepts talked about in finales and villains, the 8 kinds of fun, building a combat encounter, everything we have done up until this point, all of those other videos are going to culminate now in this wonderful special event that is designing a campaign from start to finish. I could not be more excited for this one. It is truly going to be a unique experience. Couple things for those watching this that I want to point out right from the get-go. Again, there's going to be a lot of reference to the previous videos. Watch them. They are integral to what we're doing, especially the 8 steps to building a plot, and especially the designing a combat encounter. You're going to hear us talk about these in very great detail, but to understand the concepts, it's in those workshops that we really talk about them. So links over there to see that. The other thing is, like I said, we are building a campaign from scratch, beginning to end, a template that can be used in any game system to run a campaign. The completed form is going to be up for you to download at some point down here in the link for those of you who are watching this, and you can download this form and follow along as we go through and build it. As we watch the video, of course, you'll see us populate this with all of the different events, the campaigns, the combats, the characters, everything that happens throughout it. But for those watching it, you get to see it early, and you can go and download that and follow along. So we get into what exactly we are here to do and we are here to talk about in the campaign itself. Like I said, we're going to be primarily following my 8 steps to building a plot structure. And we're not going to be building a campaign in the sense of, oh, you know, we're going to populate this with goblins and bad guys and here's the stats from 4th edition or Pathfinder. That's not what this is going to be. This is going to be incredibly system neutral. This is not going to be about mechanics. This isn't going to be about any of that. This is going to be about designing a campaign that's a template that you can then take any mechanic systems and put into it. You will be able to run this campaign with 4th edition D&D. You'll be able to run it with Pathfinder. You'll be able to run it with Dungeon World. You'll be able to run it with whatever you want. You just have to input your mechanics. But the big reason we are building this is to demonstrate these tools we've talked about in the other workshops. It's why it's such a big event. It's such a special event because you can use those tools and anybody can. Anyone can take these tools and make a campaign with it. They can absolutely just follow beginning to end, and you can have a good, engaging campaign. And this is one of my big things. It takes 0 creativity. You are just following the steps, plugging in the information. You do not have to be George R.R. Martin. You do not have to be Quentin Tarantino. You do not need that level of creativity to make a good, engaging campaign. You just need the tools to assemble yourself. In the previous videos, I've given you all the tools. Now you're going to see these in action, assembled, and together. So, first and foremost, I want to go ahead and introduce our panelists, because what you're going to see throughout this video is we are actually going to be going sort of round robin, and it's to ensure, you know, that no one person is walking in with the ideas for the campaign. Literally, I'm going to design a part, the next panelist will design another part, the next panelist will design another part, back to me, and we will circle around and build this campaign so no one has been able to come into it with any preconceived ideas of what it's going to be. No one's been able to come in and plan anything in the future because we don't know what the campaign's going to be. We are going to build it together. So let's introduce these panelists. The first I'm going to start with is CM. He'll be, say, our sort of panelist number 1, as it were. And CM, give us an introduction, just a little bit about you, how long you've been doing tabletop, how long you've been GMing, and why you're interested in doing this.
All right, thanks very much, Jim. Well, myself, I've been tabletopping for about a few years now, since 2011, I would say. Started off with D&D 4th edition. I've been GMing for about a year, off and on, different campaigns, Call of Cthulhu, Fate, things like that. Very investigative, very narrative heavy. And I'm interested in doing this because, for one, I would like to get involved more with the GM Academy because it is such an awesome tool, first off. And secondly, I enjoy world building. I love setting up these pieces that can, in fact, be inserted anywhere into anyone's plot or story.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for that, CM. And I said that'll be essentially our panelist number one, as it were. Panelist number two is Malik. Of course, he's been on a couple of the workshops. Let's get an introduction from you, Malik. How long have you been doing this? How long have you been playing? And everything like that.
Well, it's good to see you again, Jim. I've been playing for a good 8 months now, mostly Pathfinder, but I've been dabbling in a few other various different systems. But for the most part, I tend to stick to Pathfinder. Overall, I've been a part of the GMA Academy for at least half of that time in terms of that and trying to become a better GM through that process. But I wanted to be a part of this workshop / campaign design because I've never really had much of a structure to what I do and the way I go about GMing, and I'm very interested to see how building a structure can create a dynamic story and how that could potentially play into my ability to create as well as be a part of developing something that is helpful for the community.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for that introduction. And yes, Malik makes a couple interesting points, and one of those I really wanted to hit on right at this moment, and that is we are designing a campaign from beginning to end based on the principles that I've outlined. This is a way to design a campaign. This is a way that works. This is a way that new GMs and experienced GMs can use. This is not the only way to design. There are people that will design in far greater detail than what we do. There's people who will design in far less detail. There are people who design in complete different structures than what we're doing. And I'm not saying this is the end-all, be-all of ways, but what this is a practical use that you get to plug in information and get an interesting, engaging, dynamic campaign every single time. And that is what this system is designed to do. So there are differences in what we do, but there's a reason this system is set up the way it is. The other thing I want to say, while I said there's, we're coming with no preconceived notion, there are a couple things we have done that are sort of established from the get-go, and that is we are going to stick to a basic medieval medieval Europe allegory game that you would see in any traditional Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder. And the reason being, while there are a lot of other really great settings for RPG, there's feudal Japan, there is sci-fi, there is a whole bunch of others. There was a study that was done recently, a survey of players and DMs, and it came to, within the tabletop world, 77% of tabletop gamers have either played D&D or Pathfinder in the last month. 77%. So, while there are other systems, there are other narrative structures, there's other things out there, the overwhelming bulk lion's share of tabletop is medieval allegory. And for that reason, our story is going to be that. Nothing against the sci-fi fans, nothing against the feudal Japan fans, but we are going to be doing medieval allegory. Likewise, we will be talking about the 4 meta structures that there are: dungeon crawl, linear plot, mini sandbox, and true sandbox. Now, we have a limited amount of time. While we do have an extended period of time for this special event, we still have a limited period of time. So, to try and do a full sandbox in the amount of time we have is impractical. So we're not doing a full sandbox. Likewise, Dungeon Crawl has a lot of its own requirements that are different than a lot of the rest of tabletop, and it is not a good appropriate. What we are going to design today is a linear plot, a linear progression. That is the meta structure that we are going to do, and it's because of time constraints. In a future workshop, we're going to talk about how this exact same system that we're going to use to build a linear plot is used almost in its entirety for a mini sandbox, and for a true sandbox, there's just essentially a repetition of doing the steps multiple times to make those sandboxes. For the sake of time, we are only doing a linear plot. So that's the basic. The last piece of housekeeping here before we jump right into it is, for those watching, this is a 2-part series. There will be this video and one video after this. We've broken it into smaller chunks to make it easier to digest for you. So you will see once this video is completed, the next one will pick up right where it left off as we build out and finish the campaign. So, with all of that being said, we're going to jump into it. The one thing I do want to show you all is the document that we are going to be populating as we go through this whole thing. And this is our document that has all the information and each step-by-step of how we're going to build this. Again, it's available to download down below. Our completed one here. We are going to go through and fill out all of this step-by-step as we go. So, we get into actually building our campaign. And the very first thing that we're going to decide when we build our campaign, before anything else, is what is our finale. That's right, we're going to decide what the actual finale, and CM as panelist 1, you get sort of the first slot in the rotation, so you will get to decide what our finale is. But remember, finales are not an outcome. Finales are a choice that the PCs will get to decide. So, but you need to develop your story to drive to a finale. If you're not doing that, you're just building for building's sake. So before we go into a story, I want to know how it's going to end. Not the choice, not, you know, it ends in the one king overtoppling the other king. No, the finale is the big climactic battle between the two kings of the two kingdoms. The players have to decide who comes out on top and affect the world. But we have to know what that finale. And most GMs, if you're running a story, you have developed these finales. You know what story generally you want to tell going into it. So it's a common thing. But it is the very first thing that we're going to decide. So CM, what is our finale?
Well, let's get this started off right. So our setting, medieval campaign, taking that into account. Our party, throughout its major adventures, has encountered many different people, many different things, and it's come down to the fact that, well, let's say that two opposing forces, a circle of magi, a collection of magicians, powerful in their use of spells, but very small in number, they are under siege, let's say, from a set of regional baronies, set of regional lords, for a perceived slight that they have greatly, what I'm trying to find the words here, they are trying to take down this circle of magi because they feel that they have too much power, that they feel that they're trying to take over the region, that they are trying to set upon them evil curses and demons, per se, to summon evils into the world that would destroy all life itself, in a manner of speaking. So that these regional lords have decided to destroy this circle of magicians, and in fact destroy the greatest suppository of knowledge in the region as well, because the magi have a great amount of lore within their location. So the party members, they would have to decide, well, do they side with the regional baronies? Do they decide to, destroy these magicians who may or may not have done the things that these regional lords have said that they've done? Or do they side with the magi and say that, well, this is wrong, what you're doing. You cannot destroy these magicians. You do not have full proof that they are, in fact, slating you or destroying any of your kingdoms, and you are also going to be destroying things that are precious, things, knowledge, and things to that effect.
Okay, and that's a wonderful. So our finale scene is going to be, the end result that these two forces will have to battle, and there seems to be a uneven balance in power of the regional lords. We know have more power than the magi. That's why they are besieged. So that is our finale, and that's exactly what we want from a starting point. That is where everything we're going to build to goes. So that's our first thing. Our second thing that we are going to choose is our meta structure, okay? And we already talked about this. We are going to go with a linear plot. This is honestly a story that would be, right for a good mini sandbox. You've got this territory, you've got all the different stuff happening in it. It would be perfect. It would be great. For the sake of brevity, we are going to stick with doing a linear plot into it. But you will see how linear plot doesn't mean this, then this, then this, then this. as much as it means linear plot gives a specific direction on how things are going to go, but still allowing players to make meaningful choices. So we're going to sort of see how all this develops, but within our choosing a meta structure, with that we'll be going with linear plot. And that is our step one after, we choose a plot first, and then we do step one. We need to know what we're going to make, and then we start the 8 steps. So we are going to go with a linear plot. The next thing that we choose is our dramatic situation. Step 2. What are the PCs actually going to be involved in? We know there's a war, but is the conflict that the PCs are dealing with, does it have to do with wanting to protect the Magi? Does it have to do with being on a military quest from the Lords and having the moral choice between them? That's what we want from a dramatic situation. So our panelist number 2 is going to decide what our dramatic situation is for the whole story building up to a fight between the Circle of Magi and the Region Lord. So Malik, what would be our dramatic situation for our campaign?
I would personally want to go for gathering information for a mystery. I don't necessarily think the PC should start out being aware of these two opposing forces battling it out. I feel like maybe they could start with something minor that eventually builds up to it, like say they've been called in to do an investigation, or perhaps maybe they stumble into an investigation of some sort that eventually leads them to understanding the conspiracy going on between these two rivaling factions and how they've just, I would assume, fighting in the shadows, how they've just been fighting in the shadows as the world passes by.
Okay, so you're thinking that essentially they're being sent in by a third party, not specific to either of these two.
Well, not specific in the sense that it is not exactly these two. Maybe it could be someone playing on their own side. Maybe it could be someone who is related to one of the two. It could be a multitude of different things at that point.
Okay, and we will certainly figure that one out later. So then for our dramatic situation, what they are doing is actually an investigation, is really what the dramatic situation is. I'll fill that out, assuming I can tell. So the idea is going to be that the players are going to go in, investigate the situation that's going on. They're going to be done this by being sent by another party that is not, at this point that we know, directly connected to the Circle of Magi or the Region Lords. And they're going to make an investigation and then ultimately make a determination on that investigation. And that is the core of our plot. The players are going to walk into this situation as unbiased people and have to decide who's good, who's bad, who should win, who should lose, and then get wrapped up in the story that's unfolding. And that is our dramatic situation. It is an investigation. So we get to the next section, our third question, which is how long will the plot last? And again, this is one that does not have a choice. I talk about this in the workshop video on plot building, and that is when we're talking about time in tabletop, when we're talking about the correct amount of time. I hold very dearly to a story should be 15 to 20 hours. No more, getting dangerous going less unless you're doing a one-shot. And the reason being is because there's only a certain amount of time that you can hold someone's interest to. A movie trilogy is 9 hours. A novel is 12 to 15 hours to read. A television series, or a season of television, 12 to 15 hours. There's that certain number. And tabletop, things sort of unfold a little bit slower. So that's why we push it back to 15 to 20 hours. Within that 15 to 20 hours, I personally do 4-hour sessions. And there are 4 4-hour sessions is what I go for. Yeah, things can happen a little bit slower, a little bit quicker, but it also breaks us down nice into the 4-act structure that we'll look at. So for this one, we know that our time is going to be 4 4-hour sessions is what we are going for. So that one, again, no choice, but if you are making your own campaign, you want to look at how long your campaign is going to last. Because it might be longer, it might be shorter, but you need to know what it is and you need to plan it. How long will the plot last for us? 4 4-hour sessions is the answer. So the next thing we get into is establishing the participants of the plot. Now, this is the 7 different forces that we are dealing with in a campaign that are going to make up our world. And we are going to design each of these 7 right now. And we will see sort of how we go, because there's a specific order that kind of really helps with what we're doing to help flush out this world that we know that's going to happen. So we're going to start going through these 7 people. The first one that we have, and it is my turn to make a decision, is the PCs themselves. Now, in a traditional plot structure, and again, for the 7 forces, you have 2 forces that are good guys, you've got 2 forces that are bad guys, you have 2 neutral forces, and you have a wild card. And we're going to make all 7 of these right now. In a traditional plot structure, the PCs are at least one, if not both, of the good powers. And in this case, they're absolutely going to be, and you have to make a choice whether you want them to be one or both. If they're going to be both, you do want slightly different motivations within the party. Enough so that they're going the same direction, but so there's a little tiny bit of conflict. A little tiny bit of conflict within the party about what direction they want to go. And for my choice, we are going to do, the PCs are going to represent both good parties. So they will be both good party 1 and good party 2. There will not be another good party. And good and bad are relative terms. It has to do with the specific motivations of the PCs, not a good evil alignment from a D&D sense, but a good means that they are in line with motivation with the PCs. Bad means they are opposed to it. A better term to be using would be protagonist and antagonist, but we use good and bad to be simple for making a traditional story. In this story, our party are going to be both good party 1 and good party 2. So we have those decided. The next thing that we have to decide is who the main bad guy is. And we are back to our participant 1, which is CM. Now, we have an interesting choice when we're deciding our bad guys. Our bad guys, we know there's 2 different major forces in the world that we are primarily dealing with. So, do we want to assign specifically one as our villain to the story? Or do we want the players to decide which one they find to be a villain? But there needs to be someone that is in direct opposition to the players. So, CM, our main bad guy 1, the person that is in direct opposition to the players. Who is that, or what is that? Because it couldn't be just an individual person. It could be an entire army. It could be, the second in command to somebody. Who is our main bad guy for our PCs?
Well, building off what Malik said with gathering information as a main objective for the party, we could go along the lines of this party was sent to investigate strange rumors and strange happenstances surrounding a particular region lord or particular magi who is lording their position over everyone else. They've have vicious rumors surrounding them about, maybe sacrifices, strange dealings, that type of thing. Or, to go in another direction, it could involve, say, a cult of personality, where a group of people on their own have decided to take up these less than scrupulous ways, and they have started to circulate rumors that are that surround the Circle of Magi person, the main bad guy, and the party would be sent to investigate that, because it only takes so long for a cult to start to really branch out and do some dastardly things.
Okay, so let's explore what you've talked about a little bit, because ultimately you're going to have to make a decision, because it is your turn to decide this piece of the story. So first and foremost, which one are you saying is the main bad guy? Because it is your choice, sir.
Well, to make a decision on it, would be a magi, a part of the circle, who would lord his position over the other people who would not be able to perform magic. He would think of himself as a regional lord, someone of upper nobility, which would tinge off the other regional lords to no end, and he would also treat the regular peasantry like dirt, as he would believe them to be. So many people would not like him, and thus This combined with the nasty rumors that are being spread about him would cause the third party to send the PCs to investigate them regarding...
You only get to decide one force so far, sir. There are other people on this call. You get to just decide the bad guy. We'll figure out who sends the PCs. Okay, so I see this as the guy that is the head of the Circle of the Magi, that he is actually really the villain here. Or is in directly opposition to the PCs, and he is, like I said, he's a bad guy. He treats the peasants badly. He throws his power around. What is his motivation? What is he doing in life that is making him do all of this? Because part of when we design these guys is we always want a couple points of interest as far as what their motivations are, what they're like. So we know he treats the peasants badly. He throws his power around, and the other regional lords don't like him. But what's his motivation?
Well, to say, not to make it like a take over the world cliche, but perhaps to say that he seeks knowledge, perhaps an ultimate knowledge, a peak, if you will, and that this his quest is, or not to use quest, but his mission is to gather a certain amount of knowledge to make him essentially all-powerful, to make him greater as he feels.
Let me just jump in a little bit, and I want to make this point sort of specifically, because I understand what you're going for here, and it's a pitfall that people can fall into. You're giving a general sense of, it could be this, it could be that. No. We are designing a person. We are designing a person with motivation, a person with specifics. He wants something out of life. He doesn't want general knowledge. He doesn't want to take over the world. He wants something specific, and he wants it right now, or he wanted it a week ago, which is what made people angry. He wants something specific. Tell me what he wants.
All right. He wants wealth, and he wants knowledge to raise the dead or raise spirits. To explain those two, he came from a poor upbringing. He was once a peasant himself, and now that he's gained this position, he wants to keep it, and he wants to lord it. Secondly, he wants knowledge to raise spirits. He lost someone or some people in his past life, and he wants to learn to call them back to him, to join him in living the life that he leads.
And that's where now we're getting somewhere. He wants the knowledge specifically to raise spirits. That is what his motivation. That's why he's treating the peasants bad. That's why he's throwing his power around, because he's trying to keep people away to get this information. We have a bad guy. I dig it. Okay, we're moving on to the next one, which is our second good guy force. Now, we already decided that our PCs in this story are going to represent both. So in this one, it has technically already been decided that we know that the PCs are going to be our second good guy as well as our first good guy. So that's going to just skip us right along to our second bad guy. This is another force that opposes the players, but does not have the same ideals or motivations as the primary bad guy, which is the head of the Circle of Magi. So we're at Malik now, so we need a second bad guy force. What would be this second bad guy force?
Well, actually, what CMAC chose to go to actually plays straight into something that I feel would be a good minor opposing force. Such as a group of maybe cultists that perhaps convince the main bad guy that they can help him in gaining some control over reviving the dead. Perhaps the main bad guy lost a lover or a spouse that they really, or maybe a child they cared deeply for. And this group of occultists, or I wouldn't maybe say occultists, I would say cultists, perhaps evil worshippers of some sort. I know I'm getting too general, but I'm trying to narrow it down here.
No, and I understand. The one concern I have as we're talking through this, because that's what we're doing, we're talking through the process, is we already have a lot of powers involved. We know we have a mage circle. They're going to be under siege by regional lords. We've got another force that has sent the PCs, putting in a fourth group is adding a lot of complexity that there might not need to be that much. I think you're perhaps on the right track, but maybe take that and pair it up with something already in the world. So maybe it is a specific cult that is within or a subsect of the Circle of Magi.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe perhaps it's a group of magi wishing to seek the power over life and death.
Right. Now, we have that, and I'm fine with that. I think that will play very, very well. But what we want with a second bad guy force is they need different motivations than the primary bad guy force. They can be similar, but they need to be going in a slightly different direction so that they are not necessarily 100% allegiant to the main bad guy. Because if they're 100% allegiant to him, they're just part of his force in the world. They need to have their own thing going on. So maybe they're involved in this research, but what are they doing that's different? What different thoughts that they have? Give me something there.
Since we're having control over life or death, perhaps they wish to raise an undead army to defeat the Region Lords?
Okay, but I can still see that very much similar. We need something that is thematically different than what the main bad guy is doing.
I feel like the main bad guy is more, from what I understood from him, he's more along the lines of trying to raise a particular dead person, someone who he cares about. The second group of bad guys, who are another sort of mini sect of the Magi group, who are not particularly representing the ideas of the rest of the Magi group, have more have more deceptive means towards acquiring the power of the regional lords through the use of very dark magic, not particularly to rescue the main bad guy's his particular person that he cares about, so much as to gain power over the region lords through the use of this more dark, evil magic.
Okay, and I like that. And the thing that works very well, what we need to do when we are, as a DM of this campaign, what I would say to that DM is, this works very well. What you want to do is incorporate, when we get to doing the acts of the structure, showing some level of disconnect between what this group wants and what the other one wants. And the ideal way to do this is, this group that is trying to raise an undead army is going to be focused on, where can I find the most bodies to do that with? The villain, our primary villain, is looking at resurrecting one specific body. So what will happen at some point, while they are supposed to be researching for our main bad guy, what they're actually, at some point, they're going to stop doing it and start working on their thing. They're still going to be directly opposed to the PCs, but they're going to be working on something different, so there's a little bit of friction between main bad guy 1 and secondary bad guy. And when we get into the acts of the structure, we'll see how that gets to play out. So I like that. That is our main bad guy 2. We don't have any specific people yet. I'll tell you what. Give me, who's in charge of Malik? Give me a name and tell me something about the appearance of the guy that's in charge of this the second bad guy group, the ones that are trying to raise the undead army.
I would say it would be a powerful wizard, most likely a member, one of the main Magi members, who's I would say an older elf, so he could have like a little bit of arrogance to him.
See, and I'm going to stop you, because if we're going to do raise undead, and that's a D&D staple, we got to have something that's a little bit out in left field. Let's not go elf wizard. Give me something we would not expect in this role.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, because this is more of a mystery anyways, so you don't want something to
right.
cliche in that regard. Perhaps...
Let
me think about that for a second.
Flex the brain muscles. Okay, yeah, because what the big thing we want to go for is, especially when we start getting into cliche territory a little bit, when we start getting into, which is fine. There is absolutely nothing wrong with running cliches and putting cliches into the story. It's good. There's a reason they're cliches. They work. But what you want to do is take them and give them a little twist. Do something a little bit different. If we're going to do, the dark wizard that's doing its thing, no, don't make it a dark elven wizard. That's what people expect. That's what they're going to see. We're not necessarily going to be mysterious with it, but let's throw something that's a little bit different at them so it has a different feel to what would be the standard cliche. So, Malik, what do you think? You got something for something that's perhaps a little bit different?
Maybe a favorite pupil of the Magi, or is that still a little cliche?
No, I like that because you know what I'm thinking. The favorite pupil, make him young, 14, a child, but that is just naturally gifted and has this very evil tendency, which is hard to see through its innocent demeanor.
Yeah, like sort of an adopted son, sort of. Like maybe this person actually is like sort of a surrogate person for the main bad guy to replace the person he lost.
And that's a good, but yet has its own meaning. Okay. Outstanding. So that gives us our bad guy number 2. So we're back around to me now, and the next thing we have is our first neutral party. Now, neutral parties are parties that the PCs, or that each side, the good guys and bad guys, should essentially be vying for power to make to work for them. There are forces that can be used, but aren't directly interested in the conflict. And honestly, the conflict that we are building is the PCs going to investigate and a bunch of cultists trying to prevent them from gaining information. So our neutral party actually is going to be the Region Lord. How I see it at this point, for some reason, despite the Magi Circle throwing their power around, they have yet to come in and act. Now, we know the finale is going to be a siege between them, but at this point, the Region Lords have not acted. So they are a large neutral party that is interested in what's going on, but at this point have not taken sides yet. So the Region Lords themselves, as well as we know if there's going to be a siege, they have an army together. It's already there. It's ready to be deployed. They are relatively close by. There's not going to be a large period of time that happens in an investigation. So they are going to be ready. Also, I see this particular Region Lord that's going to be looking at it is, and you all know me, I hate using alignment, but for lack of a better term, he is lawful good. He is the kind that if he sees something that is dark, he sees something that is evil, he is going to immediately try and smite it. If he gets whiff of what's actually going on, but I also picture him to be strongly lawful, almost a Stannis Baratheon type, although I'm not sure if everyone would call him lawful good, but in that he needs evidence, he needs to see it, but if he sees it, justice will be swift. And that's our Region Lord. That's our first neutral party. But we have a second neutral party that we need to establish. Another force that is in the force or person that is in the area, and again has different motivations than the first neutral party, but is semi-invested in what's going on. So this takes us back around to CM. What would be our second neutral party?
Right. Well, I was thinking about that while the discussion was going on, and stop me if you think this is a bad idea, but I was thinking along the lines of a certain analog to a merchant's guild, because a merchant's guild would have need to keep around the Region Lords because they mainly do business with them, but they would also want to keep around the Magi because these Magi deal in very rare artifacts, and they're willing to, pay a good amount of money to get their hands on their ingredients, to get their hands on ancient texts and tomes and things like that. So it would be very beneficial for them to have both parties around, and they would probably get caught in the middle morally or business-wise if the two sides were to go to war.
No, and I think that's perfect. Now, I want to point out that it's such a really good use of the neutral party because you can see the Merchants Guild has very strong interest in both sides of our major conflict. They are very much interested in, the Circle of Magi. They have the rare artifacts. They have the knowledge. They have books. They have all of this. And then the Region Lord, which has a big army to feed. He has presumably a decent-sized town, a large piece of land. Merchants have to toe that line between these two forces, yet are very interested in what is going on specifically with it. So I think a merchant guild is very, very good, within it. Now, let me ask you, within the Merchant Guild, what do you think are their motivation? What obviously to sell, but who do you think they would hold, perhaps from the starting point of the campaign, a little bit more sway towards, as far as to our region lords or to our circle of magi?
I would go with the Circle of Magi because I would think that the Circle of Magi would deal in rarer artifacts, perhaps to get them more coin, and there could also be promises of power. Per se, that if this was a world, in fact, that if you could use scrolls to use magical powers, that these magi could promise these merchants certain powers and certain abilities that they could use for payment for goods and services rendered.
Okay, yeah, and I think that's a great thing. So we're going to say a Circle of Magi. They hold a little bit stronger alliance to that. What would you say their opinion is of the other region lord?
I would say that they are fairly grateful for the business, but their feelings toward them would be fairly tightened, per se, because these region lords, they try their best to kick taxes down on them, to try and extort them just as much as the merchants try to extort the region lords. So there's kind of a back and forth there of one trying to outdo the other economically. So it's a needed relationship, but it's also a bit strained.
Okay. And that's perfect, because that gives them gives them motivation, has interest in them, perfectly connected. That's our awesome second neutral party. So our last party is our wild card. And of course, this one will be for Malik. Now, the wild cards are interesting in that, if we remember from our video, a wild card is a force that we don't exactly know what's going on with it yet, but they are actually going to be working for our future top plot tie-in. So they don't necessarily have that much direct involvement, but we need to see them doing things so that we can tie the next one of these we build on top of that. And that's our future plot tie-in. So who would be our wild card force in this story, Malik?
Would it be okay if I were to introduce a new, well, not really so much a new faction, so much as a new organization, as the wild card?
Pitch it to me. We do have a lot of forces involved, but go ahead and pitch it to me.
A group, an assassination guild of some sort.
Pitch to me your idea.
Yeah, a sort of assassination guild, who are neither for nor against either group, but are actively willing to work against either, depending on who offers the most benefit, and will play parts in taking jobs from these various other organizations. I already came up with a name for the Assassination Guild. I think Brotherhood of Shadows.
Okay, we already have a name that has to be in our campaign. Okay, Brotherhood of Shadows, it's in there, and I'll tell you why I really, really like it. Because as soon as you said it, I went, okay, if there's going to be another one, they're going to be a wild card. That's fine. But they have to play very much in the back, because we have a lot of other powerful forces working on right now. So what can they do that subtly? And the first thing I thought is, we had our main villain had somebody die, and we don't know, or someone died that they want to bring back, and we don't know why yet. The Assassin's Guild is the perfect person to have killed that person. And we can and as we start going through it, we will tie the Assassin's Guild in there, but I like it. So we're going to go with the Brotherhood of Shadows, and we actually are not going to make any motivations for them yet. They're just a wild card. We'll sort of see how they play out throughout. So those are our 7 forces. And just to recap, what we have is the PCs are going to be good party number 1. Our main bad guy is the head of the Circle of Magi. He treats the peasants badly, he throws his power around so the other region lords don't like him, and he's trying to gain knowledge to raise actually a specific person. Our second good guys, again, are the PCs. Second bad guys is this pupil of the main bad guy that sort of has his own thing of he wants to raise an undead army, and he is this young guy, childlike. I'm not going to put Joffrey, but no, he is the magic user that is working sort of to her own means. The first neutral party is the other region lord that has the army ready, that has the lawful good status, that will come down with a hammer, but at this point doesn't have the evidence yet. Our second neutral party is our Merchants Guild, who is very curious as far as how everything's going to play out, because they really hold a line for the Circle of Magi for the extra, the trade that they get, the possibility of taking something more, and they're a little annoyed with the Region Lord for the high taxes that he's put on them, so they're very interested in how it's going to play out, but would be hesitant to take a direct approach. And then mixed up in all of this, we have the wild card, and that is our Assassination Guild, who is going around doing something, and the one thing we do know is they are the ones that killed the main bad guy's special someone. Special someone. Okay. So that gives our 7 powers. Now, that takes us to the next step. We have our dramatic situation. We know what the finale we're building up with all of these parties moving to. We have our 7 forces. Now we have to stop for a second. And then step 5, we hit what are the PCs trying to accomplish? And what is standing in their way? So it is back to me. So we need to identify what the PC's motives are. Again, we have a lot of swirling chaos, and if you don't stop and do this, you can kind of lose track of what's going to drive the PCs, because this is a game for the PCs, not us running these NPCs against each other. This is a game for the PCs. The PC's motivation is they have been told or hired to come in and investigate what's happening. Interestingly enough, we left that off of the docket. It's not one of our powers that it's involved with it. So the PCs, for whatever reason, motives yet to be decided, have gone, we are going to go and investigate what's happening at this location. So the PC's motivation is going to be investigating. They need to get into the area, look around, talk to people, and make a determination of what's happening. Sort of an easy one to figure out. But one to keep very important, because that is what's going to drive them forward, is this desire to investigate. I can't spell. Look at that. So that's our PC motives. The villain motives need to be in direct opposition to what the PCs are trying to do. That's how we make conflict. So we are back around to CM. What is the motivation of our villains that makes them in direct conflict with what the PCs are trying to do?
Well, to start with the first bad guy, the head of the Magi, he would be to avert all gaze from whatever particular things he were doing, say to gather knowledge, to raise the dead. So he would try to turn them away, perhaps in a slightly subtle manner, to not draw ire from them or from anyone else that comes investigating. But he would also need to he would also need to move along quickly to accomplish his objectives as quickly as possible, because there's always the threat of being discovered. So speed and subtlety would have to be his motivations.
Okay, and that's awesome. Because adding that little bit of moving quickly adds to it, because it gives them the sense of they have to get these meddling people out of here immediately. Not just do we want to keep them away from here in time, we have to get away immediately, which means something crucial is happening right now, or they're concerned something's crucial. Maybe they've got wind that the other region lord suspects something of them. We don't know. But it is very crucial to them to get them away quickly, and that gives a motivation to directly act against the PCs once they know why the PCs are there. That's a big, important key. I like that. Okay, so now we know why the PCs are here. They're here to investigate. Actually, we know what the PCs are here to do. They're here to investigate. The villains are trying to keep the investigators away for all of their motivations, and they need to move quickly for all of the circumstances. Again, we still don't know why the PCs are coming, but we will figure that out. But that takes us to step 6. Here's when we really get into the meat and potatoes. We are going to establish the set pieces. We are going to establish what happens at each event throughout this story. And it is broken down into 4 acts, and in each act there will be specific things we're trying to do. We're going to be looking at 8 kinds of fun. There's a whole bunch of things that we're going to talk about as we're going through this. But how I normally break it down, and it tends to go about right, again, there's going to be some variance when running the campaign, but it takes about 4 scenes to go through a 4-hour play session. You get about 1 scene an hour. Maybe battle goes longer, maybe a talking one goes shorter, but a scene is an event that happens that you can think of is going to take about an hour's time at the table. Some scenes might be longer, some scenes might be shorter, but that's what we're going to go for. And we're going to go step by step. So, our first act of our story, and this is important, the first act, the first play session, is learning about the NPCs, the story, and the environment. You are teaching your players about these aspects, learning about the NPCs, the story, and the environment. So each scene needs to teach them about what's going on, because they're going to walk into this knowing almost nothing. They are going to know almost nothing. And that's a key, because you want to allow them to have that discovery type of fun. You want to allow them to go and discover all of that stuff that we just made. Where you're like, yeah, you want to tell them about the Mage Guild and the Assassin's Guild and the merchants are doing their thing and the Region Lord and yada, 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 yada. They have to discover it on their own, or else it's not enjoyable. So in the first act, everything we need to do is about establishing, teaching them what's going on and what's happening with all this stuff. So we are at Malik. So the first thing we need to decide is how this adventure is going to begin. We know that they're sent there, and I made this point in Building a Plot Part 2. PCs get to decide why their character is involved in the story, not if their character is decided. The PCs are required. They are going to this area to an investigation. I will tell my players that before they start. You are going to this area to investigate. Period, end of discussion. If you come back to me and say my character's not interested in doing that, I'm going to tell you roll a character that is interested in doing that, because that's the story that we're playing. So, from a starting point, what I want to go is, this is not so much necessarily a scene, Malik, but this would be more of a, what do they know walking into the story, and how do they, quote-unquote, walk into the story? So sort of where would they begin in this story, and what would they know? And then we'll kind of get to what that actual first scene is.
I would assume that perhaps they are a group of, a company of some sorts, maybe an investigative group or a organization of mercenary slash intellectuals that go about dealing with crimes and solving mysteries, as well as being able to get into combat and not being afraid of going about that as well. And I don't know if establishing who they're being sent by to do what would count under scene 1 or starting point.
No, that's good for the player motivation, and again, we'll actually touch more on that later on, because I have a specific idea for that. But so within the starting point, what do we want the players to know essentially before the first time we sit down at the table? What are we going to tell the players that their characters are going to be walking into?
They've been hired by a merchanting organization to discover what had happened to find out what had happened to a caravan that's had recently gone missing, or had not made contact after arriving in a town.
Aha, and that is good on so many levels, because being hired by the merchant organization to investigate, what that does is that gives us, it establishes a couple things. We're going to talk about the Merchants Guild. We know people are going to be disappearing because of cult things. It ties in everything so nice, and I really wanted to point that out, because as soon as you said that, I go, that's perfect. That's what I would have done. So I don't know, maybe it's personal bias. But okay, so they were hired by Merchants Guild to go in and investigate people that are missing.
Well, specifically a caravan that is missing. Although they will find out more that that isn't the only thing that is missing in the town. when they arrive.
Okay. And how much do they know about the events that are going on in this area?
They've heard about various going-ons of potential magical happenings, unusual magical happenings, of things appearing out of nowhere, people occasionally disappearing.
Okay. I'm good. I'm gonna say I'm gonna personally disagree with that, and I'll tell you why. The concern I have is, and I didn't tell you this beforehand, just 'cause I wanted to see what you would say. But when we're talking about what we need to give them before the start of the campaign, I can certainly understand the desire to give them that and to know kind of what campaign they're walking into. But I feel it cheats the experience. What I look
Yeah,
at,
really surprised. You're right.
what I look at as when I start a campaign is what is the absolute minimum I need to give them to get them investigated in scene 1? What is the absolute baseline minimum? And I don't need to tell them about magic going on. I don't need to tell them about people missing. We have a merchant's guild. It went into this place and nothing happened. Now, I'm fine if we want to say it went into a town that's ran by the Circle of Magi, or that's in a town that's adjacent to this one region lord who's a stickler for the law. I'm fine with either direction. Give them one piece. Don't give them all the pieces.
Yeah, that's fair. But I agree. It would ruin the surprise if I just mentioned something in relation to that, and then it just happened. Oh, it's kind of does ruin the surprise. In that case, perhaps there could be a strong presence, an equally strong presence of both Magi and Region Lords trying to take specific control over this town.
Okay.
So you're not really sure which, if any of them had any involvement, or even if you are sure that one of them might be involved, you're not really sure which one, because this usually tended to have been an even town between the two.
Okay, and that's great, because then what the characters know is we're looking for a missing caravan. We know that it's probably one or the other that's involved, and it gives them reason to investigate both. So that is a good bit of information to give them sort of right from the beginning. So then, just to get a taste of this, we're going to enter into, that gives us our starting point, scene 1. The first thing to happen when we actually, get to the table and we are now describing what's happening. And we need to start establishing, and it's my turn to make the choice, and we need to start establishing who some of these people are and what some of these people are doing. So we talked about, we're actually going to start with one of the neutral parties, and that is our PCs are going to literally be traveling to town. Are going to be traveling to the town that the Circle of Magi are in. And what happens is, on their way into town, they are stopped by these border patrol that are guards of the region lord, and they're imposing a tax on everyone who's coming into the town. And they are requiring payment. Now, what this will do is it will give, we will establish the region lord, we will establish their army, we will establish their superiority, we will establish that they're taxing the merchants, one of the things we talked about. It gives us all of this establishment pieces. And we can have the various other members of the merchant guild that are trying to get through complaining about this, complaining how when it used to be, when this road was open and free to travel the Circle of Magi, this wasn't an issue, and it'll start showing us some of the conflict. So we want to have them stopped by the region lord's guards, and then what we want to reveal to them is taxation of the region lord. We want to show them the conflict between the two. And it will immediately establish our base of precedent. Now, the other thing is we want to think about what the PCs might do in this scene, because they could possibly end up coming to blows. They could possibly pay the tax. We probably don't want them fighting with this scene. We don't want them to straight up. They're going to immediately see perhaps the Region Lord as a bad guy, even though he's more of a neutral force. But because the first thing that they're getting is conflict with one of them, we're going to have that. So if we want to specifically avoid conflict, what we do is we make the toll not that much. Oh, it's just 3 travelers coming through, it's 3 silver, because you all don't have any supplies that you're coming to trade. We're really taxing the traders. But enough for them to see what's going on, to hear conversations, and to be able to interact with merchants, to be able to interact with some of the guards people to get information. And that's the first scene that they're going to walk in and sort of have happen. So now, before we get into scene 2, which will be CM's turn, we are at our first hour here. So I want you are going to go ahead and take a break. We will split to the second hour. When we get back, of course, we're going to continue telling the story. We're going to continue to make out the acts of the structure, and we're going to continue building this thing all the way up into our big conflict between the Region Lords and the Circle of Magi, and it will be glorious. I can already see it coming. So with that, please join us for the second video, and we will continue from there.